Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when you're watching this. Today's lesson is 1-2, and it's about adding and subtracting real numbers. So by the end of the day, or by the end of you watching this video, we want you to be able to add and subtract real numbers. Now I know that you did this last year as well, so this should be a review. But again, I found out that kids forget a lot over the summer, and that we need some more work on this topic. So 1-2, adding and subtracting real numbers. As you can see, we have two vocab words, a lot better than the last lesson, right? The first one is absolute value, and you may or may not have heard of this before, but absolute value is a number's distance from 0 on a number line. So let's say that we have a number line here. We'll just use this one. Put some arrows on the ends. And here's 0. So we'll just keep it simple here. Let's go up to, see, here's 3. So 3's absolute value would be 3. It's pretty simple. It's 3 units away from 0. Where absolute value really makes a difference is when you get into the negatives. So here we have -1, -2, -3. Now the absolute value of -3 is also 3 because it's 3 units away. Absolute value can never be negative because it's a distance, and distance can't be negative. You wouldn't go out and say you ran -2 miles. That doesn't make sense. So absolute value, what it does is it just makes numbers positive. And the symbol for absolute value is 2 straight lines like this. So if I wanted the absolute value of -3, that's what that would look like. And we know that its absolute value is +3. So absolute value just changes numbers from negative to positive, essentially. And its definition is a number's distance from 0. Second vocab word is opposites. You also might hear me say additive inverses. And these are two numbers that when you add them together, you get 0. So, for example, -2 plus 2 is 0. So -2 and 2 would be opposites, or they'd be called additive inverses. Opposites is probably what you'll hear me say the most. So, the opposite of 2 is -2. The opposite of 4 is -4. The opposite of -5 is 5, etc. So we'll start with our rules for adding. Now, there's just basically 2 things you have to remember. When you're adding, if the numbers you are adding have the same sign, that means they're both positive or they're both negative. You're just going to add the numbers and keep the sign. So, quick example here, -6 plus -4. Both of those numbers are negative, so I just add 6 plus 4, which is 10, and I keep the negative sign because they're both negative. If they have different signs, okay, meaning one is positive, one is negative, you're just going to take the 2 numbers and subtract them, like big minus little. And then you're going to keep the sign of the bigger number. So here's an example. -13 plus 8. 8's positive, 13's negative. So this is really the same as 13 minus 8, which is 5. But we have to decide which sign. Is 13 bigger or is 8 bigger? Well, 13's bigger and it's negative, so my answer has to be negative. So my answer would be -5. So if I have different signs, I subtract the 2 numbers and keep the sign of the larger number. Okay? To kind of sum that up, something you can kind of remember, same sign, sum. So if they have the same sign, add them. That's what sum means. Different sign, difference. They have a different sign, subtract them. Keep the sign of the bigger number. Okay? And if you can remember these rules, it'll be really helpful as you add and subtract, especially as we get into a little bit more difficult problems. Same sign, sum, different sign, difference. So let's do some addition examples here. So when you get an addition problem, the first thing you have to ask is, do they have the same sign or different signs? And you can see here that they have the same sign. So all I'm going to do is 4 plus 7, which is 11. And since they're both negative, I keep the sign, negative 11. Next example, negative 13 plus 7, different signs. So here, I'm going to do 13 minus 7, which is 6. And then again I ask, is 13 bigger or 7 bigger? 13 is, and it's negative, so my answer is negative 6. Alright, now we have some decimals here. Again, same or different signs, different. So what we're going to do is actually do 17.9 minus 15.6. I'm just going to write it like this so it makes it easier to subtract. 9 minus 6 is 3. Drop the decimal point, 2. So I get 2.3. So then what's bigger? Negative 17, or just 17.9, or 15.6? Well, 17.9 is bigger and it's negative, so that means my answer will also be negative. Alright, let's look at subtraction now. Now subtraction, sometimes, as you know, can be really easy, but it gets confusing sometimes when we start getting into the negatives. So we have this rule: subtracting a number is the same as adding its opposite. Now we talked in our vocab words what the opposite was. So like if a number was 2, it would be the same. If we're subtracting 2, it would be the same as adding negative 2. So what we're going to do for subtracting is we're simply going to change it to addition. So if I have a subtraction problem, I'm going to change it to addition, and then I'm going to follow the rules that we just talked about, with the same sign sum, different sign difference. So see here we have 3 minus 8 as our original problem. We're going to rewrite that as 3 plus, and then the opposite of 8, which is negative 8. So 3 plus negative 8. Now here I have different signs, so we'll follow our difference rule. I'm going to do 8 minus 3, which is 5. 8 is bigger than 3, that's what this is telling you down here, so I have to keep the negative sign in my answer, so then I have negative 5 as my answer. So once again, if it's a subtraction problem, I'm going to change it to an addition problem by adding the opposite. Okay? Notice I just didn't change the subtraction to a plus. I changed the subtraction to a plus, and I changed the sign of the number after it. And then I followed the same rules that we talked about earlier. So let's look at some subtraction examples. So here I have negative 6.7 minus 4.1. So the first thing I'm going to do is rewrite this as an addition problem. So 4.1 is currently positive, so now it's going to become negative. So I have negative 6.7 plus negative 4.1. Now I ask the question again, same or different signs? These guys have the same sign. So I'm just going to add them together. And when I add them together, I get 10.8. And I want to keep the sign, and since they're both negative, it's negative. So my answer would be negative 10.8. Okay, again, on this one, the first thing I want to do is change it to an addition problem. So I change the subtraction to a plus. This is a negative 4, so it's going to become a positive 4. Now once again I ask different or same signs. These are the same. 5 plus 4, we know that, that's 9. And since both of these are positive, my answer is positive. And then you will run into some fractions, so I thought I should put this one in there just so that you'd be prepared for that. So let's go ahead and rewrite this as an addition problem. Okay, the 2 7/10 is currently positive, so I'm going to make it negative. So I have negative 2 and 3/5 plus negative 2 and 7/10. Now, for me, I think it's easier to turn these into mixed numbers. And hopefully you remember how to do that. You do 2 times 5 plus 3. So this is going to be negative 13/5 plus 2 times 10 is 20 plus 7 is 27, negative 27/10. So they have the same sign. I need to add them. So if you'll remember, we have to have common denominators when we add fractions. Common denominator here would be 10. So I'm going to turn this into negative 26/10 plus negative 27/10. Since I have the same sign, I'm just going to add 26 plus 27, which, if I can do my math right here, I believe is 53 over 10. Since they're both negative, my answer is negative. And I could leave it like this if I want to. If you prefer mixed numbers, 10 goes into 53 5 times with 3 left over, so this would be negative 5 3/10 as my answer. Okay, so again, if it's subtraction, you're going to change it to addition, follow your addition rules. Okay, and your addition rules, once again, but if they have the same sign, you're going to add them, keep the sign. If they have different signs, you're going to subtract them and keep the sign of the bigger number. Okay? I know the rules sound kind of confusing at first, but I'm telling you, if you take the time to memorize those, it will definitely make your life a lot easier. If you need to replay this, pause it, rewind it, whatever, to get your notes done, go ahead and do that. Otherwise, I will see you tomorrow.